Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Diamonds in the Rough podcast, episode 11. I'm your host, Robert Big Shot Rob Straight. Today we have a special guest, Patrick Chester, who is a former big-time sports gambler, and he's also a current mental health professional. Welcome to the show today, Patrick.
Robert, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for coming on. So let's get started here. I wanted to ask you, how did you get started in sports gambling, and what made you stay in it for 15 years?
Well, I grew up in sport. I grew up around sports. I grew up playing sports. I loved sports as a kid. You know, it was a passion of mine growing up. And then the older I got, as I got into my 20s and early 30s, you know, it was just something I did with my friends. We would hang out, we would go to games, we would bet on games. This was long before internet gambling, you know, so we would have to do it. We'd have to get creative, you know, we'd have to do it through friends that were maybe out of state in Nevada or something like that. But it progressed, you know, and it got to a point, as we'll get into it here, later on in my early 30s and mid 30s, where it just took over my life, and I could no longer shake it.
Definitely understand. I try to do sports. I mostly try, like when I bet on sports, I mostly do like fantasy sports. I know DraftKings and FanDuel, or like the big things. I don't really do so much betting on games. I'm mostly just betting on players and doing like fantasy football and things like that. I wanted to ask you, when you started gambling, what sports did you gamble on the most, and were there any like certain players and or teams that you bet on more often than others, that you might have been like a fan of?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, I was primarily, when I started, I was betting on football, mostly college football. And then that progressed, and then it got to, I eventually evolved into NFL, but it was mostly college football. And I would bet on my team. My team was, whether they were good, bad, didn't matter. I would always bet on them, which was not, I wouldn't recommend that. Your heart gets in the way of your common sense, and you start betting. You can convince yourself that your team's going to cover the point spread no matter what the odds are, what the obstacles are. And so I did that a lot.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. I wanted to know also, when did you know that it was time to seek help, and what type of help did you receive once you got into gambling a lot and betting on sports? When did you know like it was just time that you had like a problem and you needed to get help?
I recognized there was a problem, around the time I got married, which would have been around 2000. Well, it was 2006, so I was in my early 30s, but I didn't seek help. I kept it to myself. That's where my experience and my story, kind of takes a dark and twisted turn, is that I knew there was a problem because of my behaviors and the things I was doing and the choices I was making to feed my addiction, but I never did seek help. I should have. I just didn't. Eventually what happened was, towards the very end, my family got involved. They discovered the problem this was many more years down the road when they discovered it, but they were the ones who got involved and basically presented treatment to me as my last hope and my lifeline to get myself out of the mess I was in.
Definitely understand that. Definitely makes sense, and I'm glad that you were able to seek help, and that you're doing a lot better now. In general, why do you think people become addicted to gambling, and why has sports betting become so popular today?
Well, gambling addiction is, and a lot of people don't understand this. It's addiction is addiction, whether it's gambling addiction or heroin or meth or alcohol or whatever. It's a process in your brain that's going on. It has to do with dopamine and all sorts of different factors. But addicts, whether it's drugs or gambling, in my case, we get sucked into something and we're doing it before we even recognize what's happening. We're already addicted. And so, for me, I loved sports, and I was always, had a way of rationalizing my behaviors and my decisions by just saying, hey, I'm going to a game, and I'm going to bet on it just to have fun with it. I don't need to bet on it, but I'm going to do it just to have fun. And it got to a point where I couldn't even watch a game unless I had thousands of dollars on it. It didn't hold it. It didn't keep my interest unless I was betting large sums of money on it.
I definitely can agree with you somewhat. Sports betting, like whether you're doing like fantasy or just betting on the games, it definitely makes it like more interesting to watch rather than just watching a game for like the pure enjoyment. But sometimes when you bet on a game, whether it's through fantasy or bet on the game, it kind of takes away from the pure enjoyment of just watching the game for fun, because like you're rooting for players that do well or like teams that do well, and then when they don't, like you're all upset. You're like, damn, I lost money on that, rather than not betting at all, and then you just have risk nothing to lose. So, but like it definitely makes it more fun, like when you bet. But I mean, you obviously just have to watch the amount of money that you bet, and make sure you don't bet more than you have. You don't want to lose it all. So it definitely makes sense. But sports betting today's definitely become so popular, and there's like, now I see more often there's more things that you can bet on where you can like win money, where you're just like predicting odds of things like that. Like a lot of websites like Fox Bet and some of these things, they have like free contests where you can just like pick the outcomes of like games and events or like players, and you can like win money, but where you're not actually putting like money on the line to lose. You're just like predicting like what may happen in a game, and then you can like win money. But I mean, it's definitely hard to win money like that. But I guess it's like it gives everybody a chance, and you don't have to risk like losing money. So that's something I've seen more out there nowadays.
Yeah, for sure. And like you mentioned, fantasy sports and that sort of thing. I'm not one of these people that says, because of what I went through in my experience, I don't believe that, gambling is this evil thing and nobody should ever touch it. I do recognize that most people can do it in a responsible manner, but it's everywhere now. It's everywhere, and kids are getting involved with it at early ages with their parents, whether that's fantasy sports or whatever. And if their parents educate them on the dangers of gambling, I think that's great. If they don't, some of these kids inevitably will grow up and they will fall into gambling addiction. And what comes with, and then families end up getting destroyed over it. And so to me, it's all about educating kids on the dangers of it and walking them through it, and not introducing them to it at 8, 9, 10 years old.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Like with a lot of things in society, it's definitely important to, be able to learn, at a young age, and get the education so you know what to do and what not to do. I want to ask you personally, with everything you've gone through, what have you learned the most that you can advise others on as far as what to do and what not to do when it comes to any type of gambling?
Well, the number one thing is to recognize early, if you can, where you're at. If you start making choices that are wrong to support your gambling, you've got a problem. Okay, and if you're spending more, if you're gambling more than you can afford, you've got a problem, because that leads to poor choices. It leads to you seeking other avenues to get money to feed your gambling. If you're gambling again, if you're betting more than you can afford, and that, it's a problem. You need to address it early. For me, I didn't. Again, mine went on for many, many years, and it never should have. And if you get on top of it early and talk to somebody, if you think there's a problem, in confidence, somebody that's not going to share it with somebody else or tell somebody about it, then that's a wise thing to do.
Definitely, I definitely agree with what you're saying. It makes complete sense. So last question: what work have you recently done, or are you currently doing, and where can people find you online?
So what I do is I speak with groups. I speak at treatment centers. at high schools when kids are in high school, right now that's tough. But again, the main theme with me is just educating kids on the dangers, because gambling it's always something that's been portrayed as just a fun thing to do, and it's an exciting thing to do. Whereas you see alcohol and drugs, and we talk about the dangers of that, and those can lead to addictions as well. But we don't talk about the dangers of gambling. So that's my focus. I try and educate kids on it. I'm in the process of writing a book that should be out by the end of summer or early fall, and all of everything is on my Twitter. It's at Patrick Chester 9, and all of that information is on there, where you can find my book and websites and all that stuff. And again, I'm about awareness and trying to keep people and help educate people on the dangers of it.
Definitely. It's definitely good that you're trying to do something and teaching young kids and young people about everything you went through, and helping them get through this, and as far as other things as well. And also best of luck on the book. Keep me posted. I had a couple other guys on the show before that also wrote books. They talked about their books and wanted to promote their books. So I'll definitely look out for the book. Whenever it comes out, definitely let me know about that. I'll check it out. Again, I want to thank you for coming on the show, and it was definitely great having you and talking about what you've been through with the sports gambling. And I wish you the best of luck in the future, whatever you're doing. Definitely keep in touch. Maybe we can have you on again sometime. To maybe promote your new book. Again, my name is Robert Streit. This has been episode 11 of the Diamonds in the Rough podcast. Take care, everybody. Talk to you next time.
Thanks, Robert.